Hey, what's happening, guys? So after that first Ghost of Yotei reaction video that I made, I wasn't really going to make any more videos about that Ghost of Yotei showcase. But, I've been mainly just watching other videos, interviews that have come out since, and other people making their own, other channels that I follow making their own reaction videos to that showcase. And it wasn't until I was watching this short by one of my favorite content creators, Joe Raptor, where he basically says something that's verifiably wrong. He claims something about a core aspect of the game that I had just watched an interview where the devs explicitly contradict what he says.
Yotei adds big changes. It might look a lot like Ghost of Tsushima, but playing this game should feel completely different. There is namely way more freedom, as we can choose to go after the main story targets in the order we want.
So this is not a game where you can go after all 6 in any order in the way that you want. No, like we don't want to. That's not what we're trying to achieve. But the same, because we want that story structure.
So, rage fuel is not the right expression, but is the first one that comes to mind. It's a little bit too strong, but let's just say that motivated me to make my own breakdown analysis of the showcase. Keeping in mind what I had just seen from both of the interviews, and I was just going to comment on the whole thing. So this video is basically that. It's just a breakdown of other things that I've noticed rewatching that showcase and contrasting that with the stuff that I've seen in the interviews where developers kind of delve a little bit deeper into some of those aspects. So hopefully you guys will find this useful or entertaining or both. Let me know in the comments and let's get started. So this is one of the features that I've been thinking about the most since it was first shown in one of the trailers. And it's this ability for Atsu to go to certain specific places and go into her memories and relive her past. And I think it could be a really powerful tool for storytelling if done right. You can see also, one of the things that caught my attention here is that, of course, Atsu's father is giving her a sword, which is not just any sword. It's the sword that she's left to die with by the Yotei 6. You can see Lord Saito stab her with it, and then later on she comes back wielding it to exact her revenge on them. But one thing also, it's not just any sword, but if you look at this one part of her encounter with the snake, he says, "But here you are, the swordsmith's daughter," right? So that means that it's not just him gifting her any sword that was purchased or whatever. It's a sword that he made specifically for her. So it has significance in that way, but also the fact that he's a swordsmith. So that means that her upbringing, she was familiar with swords. You can see that she has that, I think it's the hilt of one of those, I forget the name, but those wooden swords that are for practicing. And one other thing that caught my attention is if you look at the charms, one of them is called the Mother's Charm, and it's an archery charm. And if you look at her mother, you can clearly see behind her, there's a bow, that's kind of sticking out of her right side, right here by her right shoulder. So that means that she is proficient probably from an early age with the sword and the katana and the bow, right? And then you can also see she was probably sparring here with her brother. So her family was very significant in who she was as a, warrior. And that's pretty, that's pretty cool. It's something that's not immediately obvious, but I'm sure that we're going to find out more about that.
Ghost of Yotei focuses on player freedom more than any game Sucker Punch has ever made. But it's also a game that at its heart is inspired by so many of our favorite wandering samurai films. So let's start off by talking about exploration at the edge of Japan. As she makes progress against the Yotei 6, her legend as the on-rail grows.
It's her.
Bounty will go up, drawing the attention of deadlier foes. There is a hefty price on Atsu's head. Now, Atsu can also hunt down her own bounties that bring her all around the land. This is a lucrative way to make some money to fuel her vengeance quest.
So this is another gameplay mechanic that I wasn't too sure what to expect from, but initially I just kind of assumed that it would function similarly to the wanted state in Assassin's Creed Shadows, where, randomly you're going to have some kind of dangerous enemies, like elite type of enemies that are going to come after you. And in this case, it would be the bounty hunters. But they do expand on this a little bit more in one of the interviews, so I'm going to play that clip for you guys here.
Without going into a whole bunch of details, there is a changing landscape of different types of archetypes, and you might have some traps that happen as you kind of move through those bounties. As that bounty goes up, it's going to get more difficult for you and challenging, and that keeps it really exciting too.
So it's actually pretty cool that it's not just a stagnant state like in AC Shadows where you're just hunted, but rather your bounty increases as your legend increases, and so it gets more dangerous and the stakes are higher. And so hopefully we'll see, like he says, different archetypes, so maybe different types of elite enemies or maybe even mini bosses that come after you. So a lot of potential with this, and I'm actually super stoked to see how this is actually going to play out. Obviously, they haven't disappointed so far.
Hidden in the world are altars of reflection. Finding one inspires Atsu and unlocks a new ability to help her on the journey ahead.
So this skill tree looks very similar to the one in Ghost of Tsushima, down to the same icons here. You can see for double assassination, same icon. This one could be the sprinting dash, attack, looks to be the same. And we can see that they're on the Ghost or Onryo skill tree. Above that looks to be some sort of tree, and then below a katana, and then a figure of Atsu, and then the wolf, then some firecrackers looks like, and then the tree again. So those are all the different skill trees. I mean, obviously we don't really know, but we can surmise that this katana one has to do with weapons. Not sure what the Atsu one is supposed to signify. The wolf obviously has to do with wolf abilities. The firecracker could be the ghost weapons. Above we see that there's the flowers are still a currency, so you can still collect flowers for dyes, I would assume. And then instead of supplies, now we have the currency of this coin currency, which I don't know what it's called. And then on the right, we can see that the perfect parry earns a moderate amount of spirit, which is what they call resolve. So now you use spirit for special abilities and for healing, which they've already confirmed that it's the same animation, and you're still going to be using your resolve or spirit for healing.
I'm happy to tell you that the healing animation is in fact the same. And it
still badass.
Well, it's like this weird thing. It's this weird thing where you're hurt in a fight, and how do you heal yourself? By like getting mad, getting more angry, and then your health bar goes up. It was in fact inspired by. Have you seen the movie? A little indie film called The Force Awakens.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it was this.
I
knew it.
You nailed it.
You got it exactly. And we thought, well, okay, that's how you get better in the middle of a fight. You just hit yourself a punch, and it works.
But we think the best way to play is to simply pull out your spyglass, find something interesting on the horizon.
So one cool thing I noticed here is that the spyglass will show you the name of the place you're looking at, also the designation. So above you can see that it says Large Pagoda, and then below it says the direction you're looking at. So that kind of eliminates the need for a compass on the UI itself, which I think is maybe like an extension of the guiding wind and a way to make the world or navigating throughout the world more immersive. So this is fantastic. I'm all for this.
And enjoy the ride.
Let's ride.
And here we're shown another new interaction that happens with the environment, which is that flower streams will give Atsu a boost. So this is another non-invasive way to kind of make the open world feel more interesting. You know, you don't have to use them, but if you happen to be going in that direction, it's just, I guess, a small speed boost.
The lands around Yotei are fast. It's not about checking it all off, it's about engaging in the content that gets you excited. Embrace that curiosity and let the wind guide you on your hunt.
Now, here's another interesting thing, right? So this is Hokkaido, which is at the northernmost part of Japan. It's actually an island as well. It's not connected by land to Japan, but Mount Yotei is somewhere around here. And so I was curious to see what the actual size of the map was going to be like, and I did find this one post by Ungeek. It says, here's what we think the Ghost of Yotei map will look like based on the current info about the game, based on the game's title and story description, blah blah blah. And you can see the difference in size, right? So Hokkaido is massive, 83,000 square kilometers versus Tsushima's 708 square kilometers, right? And so we're talking about a difference of more than 100 times. And their estimation was that the map was going to be just the part of Hokkaido that's immediately surrounding Mount Yotei. So that was their estimation. And if you look at the map, you can see how massive Hokkaido is in comparison to Tsushima, which is right over here. And if we want to look at the actual size difference, is that Tsushima would fit 117 times in the area of Hokkaido. So they're obviously not going to make Hokkaido to be proportionate to Tsushima, right? Because that would mean that it would be an incredibly massive map that just wouldn't make no sense. So basically it's going to be, my estimation is that it's going to be much bigger than Tsushima, but it's not going to be proportionate, right? So they're going to take the whole shape of the map and then try to fill it with activities and content and, what have you. But it's not going to be proportionate to Tsushima because otherwise it would just be extremely big, right? So it's not going to be realistic in that sense, but it's still probably going to be way bigger than Tsushima. And one more thing that I wanted to show is that if you look at the wolf pack picture or part of the showcase, you can see right next to each character there is their location on the map, and you can see that it's the entire shape of Hokkaido. So they're going for the full Hokkaido island, which I think is pretty ambitious, and I'm super curious to see what they're going to do with that because, yeah. Okay, so this is the section of the video that I was the most interested in seeing, and gleaning as much detail as I could. And unfortunately, the interviews don't really help give you a deeper understanding of the combat. I mean, the creative directors just kind of just repeat the same thing. And it's also in the video. They just talk about lethal precision, but, it's that everything they talk about is just very surface level. They do talk about the fact that there's no more stances and now you have to use the right weapon for each enemy type. And they talk a little bit about the new disarm feature and stuff like that, but they don't really go into detail. And honestly, because they also get another question later that's about performance and more technical stuff, and they literally say we're not the best people to talk or to ask that question to. So these guys, you know, they have good answers about the macro, I think, of the game, just like the vision, because obviously they're the creative directors. But the details and the technicalities of combat or performance or such matters, I don't think that they really are that involved. I mean, obviously they are to some degree, but you know, like the one thing that made it clear to me that they're not as involved, especially in the combat, or maybe just like they probably are in more like the feel of combat than the specific technical details of combat. Because even one of the answers that one of them gives is like straight up incorrect. He says that he likes the spear because you are able to push enemies off of cliffs, which is not something that was present before. And literally, you could do that with wind stance in Ghost of Tsushima with the Typhoon Kick, which is a strong or a charged heavy, charged triangle if you're playing on PlayStation. And there is literally a trophy for doing that, for kicking an enemy off a cliff or pushing them off a cliff.
If you've got the spear, you can use it to launch enemies backwards. So if you're near a cliff, you can send them off the cliff to their death. This is something that wasn't in Ghost of Tsushima with this kind of decision making.
So, yeah, just take whatever they say with a grain of salt, and then leave it up to other people to, in more detail, to analyze what the combat is. And I really wish that there was an interview with somebody that's, you know, a combat designer, but unfortunately there's nothing like that currently. So I'm going to try my best to interpret what I saw and point out the things that I noticed throughout the showcase.
Ezo is a dangerous place. Atsu always wields a weapon. As for which, that's up to you. Will you choose a katana, spear, a surigama, odachi, or dual swords? Each is uniquely effective against a particular enemy and has their own set of upgrades to discover and master.
Plant psycho banners.
Let's see how she uses these weapons in the field, searching for leads on Lord Saito.
This is our food, from our soil.
The soldiers needed more to free you.
Free us. Inokichi steals our crops.
This is the first thing that caught my attention here. It's the first time that we see a dual input in Ghost, and this time what you do is you press triangle and circle to throw the Kusarigama and do kind of a grapple attack with it, where you pull the enemy towards you and then you get an assassination. And this probably has to do with the way that inputs are bound in this game. Obviously now they have 5 combinations for each weapon category. So for example, before you had R2, and then using that you could use the face buttons, so X, square, triangle, or circle, to switch between stances. But now you have different weapons. And because there's 5 weapons now, you have to use, I think it's L2 for the 5th weapon. So that kind of complicates things a little bit. I'm curious to see how that's going to feel like when you're actually playing. And I'm going to show that a little bit later so that you guys have a visual reference. But then you also have 5 ghost weapons in this case. So again, you use R2 to switch between them using the D-pad. So up, down, right or left. And then you use L1 for the 5th one. So in this case, it's the gun. I'm curious to see, again, what that's going to feel like playing. I'm sure, you know, it's like everything. You're going to get used to it at some point. But yeah, then let's keep watching. So he does a grapple, and this over here is where you can see that by pressing R2, you can pick up a weapon from the ground and throw it. And it doesn't look like you can actually keep the weapon to fight. It looks like the only option you have when you pick up a weapon that's not your weapon is to throw it. Because as you can see, you don't get an option to switch between weapons or really to do anything. All she does is she's just in that throwing stance and doesn't look like you can switch between weapons once you have that in your possession. And this is the first time that we see a kind of a special attack. So you see that there's a glint on her, both of her blades, and this is probably something that you learn, like a technique. It does like a spinny move. It's like a double spin then with the finisher at the end. So this is basically the first time that we see something like the Heavenly Strike, where it's an unblockable attack. And this over here, I love the parry sound with the spear. It's that so satisfying. I actually can't wait to play with the spear just to parry. And then here we see the these yellow attacks, which are the disarm attacks. So basically the concept is that they can disarm you, but you can also disarm them if you're quick enough on their reaction. So this is kind of their version of a like in Lies of P, there's the Fury attacks, and in Sekiro, there's the Perilous attacks. So in a little bit, she's going to do the Chiburi, where she does the little spinny to basically clean the blood off of her blade. And when she goes, this is actually really cool, the fact that you can use the Spyglass, from stealth and from elevated positions to kind of see who you're actually attacking and, what their weapons are and kind of analyze. And this is, again, just taken from Ghost of Tsushima. The way that the camera does this slow speed, slow motion. It's really cool to see that come back. Again, you see the ranged weapons that she has available. And so another thing that I noticed here is a lot of the moves are taken straight from Ghost. Like this attack is in Ghost. That attack is definitely in Ghost as well, and it's also an unblockable. This is the Dirt Throw, or Mutsubishi, or I think it's called. And the combat sounds, the blade connecting with flesh has changed. Actually, they redesigned them. So if you pay attention, and I'm gonna put them side to side, it seems like it's crunchier now. Whereas before it was more wet. It was like squishy wet. And now it's more like crunchy wet, if that makes sense. So that's kind of interesting to see that they changed the sound, the audio design for basically every time that you hit someone with your swords or blades or spear or whatever it is, any sort of sharp weapon. And then another thing that I was noticing is that if you take a look at the top, the health bar, and then you see the white bar, the red is obviously the health, and then the white bar is the stagger bar. And something that used to happen, which was not really that clear because you didn't really have a visual cue as to what was happening, is now you get a visual cue for the stagger, which is the stagger bar breaking. But before, it just got depleted and there was no animation to tell you what was happening. So you got the stagger. I mean, after a while, you kind of just figure it out. But this one is more intuitive because you know that that's the time to kind of go in for an extra few hits, right? Whereas before, you kind of just missed it, and maybe you were like repositioning or something. But now it's more clear because you have that visual cue of the stagger bar breaking, which is pretty cool. And then this animation over here, which I don't know, I'm curious to see if that's going to be something like a button press where you can either just finish them off or spare them, I guess is a more correct term, because you see that she does this like little trip kick where instead of, I get the impression that would be a moment to decide whether you want to, like after you deplete their health bar, either you want to just kill them off or spare them. Next up, we got some more info about the wolf and the way that it works. And it's more or less what I was expecting. I was thinking that it would come and go at will. And sometimes it would just show up in really clutch moments. And I think that would make combat feel more cinematic and more exciting that way, because it would basically save you when you thought all the odds were against you. So I clipped the part of the interview where he tells us a little bit more in detail how the wolf works.
Atsu doesn't always fight alone. She'll meet several allies on her hunt, including a mysterious wolf. The wolf is a wild animal that's kind of always at the edge of where you're at. It follows you, but it's not your dog at all. It is definitely a wild creature. And it will show up in some missions, and it won't as well, because it won't just come because you call it in any random situation. It has a mind of its own.
Okay, so the next two clips I'm including because they address the story. They're one taken from both of the different interviews that I've been using for this video. And unfortunately, they don't go into too much detail, but they're revealing enough that it makes me hopeful for their story. Because honestly, I feel like that's really where Ghost of Tsushima, or in this case, Ghost of Yotei, has the most room for growth. Because, you know, the story in Ghost of Tsushima was okay, but I think there's a lot of potential for the story in Ghost of Yotei to be a lot better, or a lot more than that was. And another thing that they address is the similarities between Ghost of Yotei and AC Shadows, which is basically the identical same premise. And one thing that gave me a lot of hope was that they say that the whole revenge part of that story is just the beginning of their story, whereas in AC Shadows, that's the whole thing, right? You know, there are side quests and NPCs that you befriend and make your allies throughout the journey, but it seems like there's going to be more of an emphasis on that part in Ghost of Yotei than in the revenge story, which that's basically the main thing in AC Shadow. So another thing that they talk about is the sort of similarities between Akira Kurosawa and John Ford. And there's things that I noticed from the beginning. You know, obviously John Ford is known for Westerns, and Akira Kurosawa was very much influenced by him. They talk about the idea exchange between them, which I don't think was really a thing. I did some research, and it looks like, you know, John Ford was already in his 40s when Kurosawa was making his first film. So I think there's been, I think interviews, or Kurosawa has been quoted as saying that he was very much influenced by John Ford and Westerns. And so that's really interesting, because from the beginning of the reveal trailer, when you hear the theme for Ghost of Yotei and you hear the shamisen, you also hear this Western guitar strumming in the background. So it's kind of cool that they brought it full circle. If Kurosawa was one of their main influences for what the game that they were trying to make with Ghost of Tsushima and then now Ghost of Yotei, that they're incorporating the influences for Kurosawa into this. And you can clearly see that they're, straying a little bit from the traditional formula of Ghost of Tsushima, which was very much 100% traditional Japanese. Like, not that I recall, I don't remember any foreign instruments in that soundtrack. And also just stylistically, everything was very much, it was kept very traditional. Whereas now you see that, what they're doing with the lo-fi tracks, and it seems like they're taking a little bit more creative liberty this time around with some Western elements. And I'm interested to see what that turns out to be like once we actually can play the game. So anyway, here's the two clips.
Earlier in the year, Assassin's Creed Shadows launched, and the recent showcase showed a few things that were present in that, or sort of similar touchstones. So, like that big traditional revenge epic story, the clue card sort of investigative drive. What was it like to presumably have a lot of these things in development for a long time and see another studio also lean in that direction? Was it Was it bracing for you? How did it feel?
You know, we're big fans of feudal Japan and open world games, and to see another one on the market is exciting as gamers, right? We make the game that we want to play, and to see more like that, it's great. Our game is our own game. It features the things that we cherish. Our story of revenge is a classic in samurai cinema, but it's just the first step in this long tale of Atsu going from this broken lone wolf to assembling a wolf pack, and she changes. Her identity is the Onryo moving through the land where people grow to fear her and love her. It's its own experience. We can't wait for people to play it. Of course, we don't want to give away story details, but I can tell you that her quest for revenge is the start. It's absolutely not the whole thing, but it's a great start.
So what we've done is we've taken some inspiration to kind of make that sense of this wilderness come alive by putting in some Wild West film tropes that actually were part of the idea exchange back in the day between John Ford and Akira Kurosawa. You'll see there's a lot of overlap between those old Westerns and samurai movies. And we did that because it makes you feel more like this is kind of a wild territory.
So this next bit of interview I'm including because I referenced it earlier when I spoke about one of the interviewers asking them questions about, you know, performance and fidelity, quality modes, whether or not there was going to be PS5 Pro enhancements and that kind of thing. And they admitted that they're not the best people to talk to about that, but they also revealed some details that were not previously known, you know, about rendering for the huge environments that they have, you know, snow deformation and such. So I thought it was interesting enough to hear what they had to say. So that's the reason I'm including it in this. Here's the clip.
Hard pivot now to a technical question. So what kind of performance levels are you targeting? So is this like a 30 FPS thing? Is it 60 FPS performance mode? Is there going to be PS5 Pro enhancements? What are you thinking on those fronts?
So we'll have, there's like a whole bunch of specifics, and Nate and I are probably not the best person to answer that, but I will say we're going to sort of talk about some of those specifics of what we're targeting here pretty soon. But I will say there's a whole host of things that we have done that I do know about that we've improved on the game. I'll just say a couple, like certainly like improving, you know, basic stuff like, you know, hair and skin shading. But because the sight lines are so large, they are much further than Tsushima because we're trying to create this epically large place. We had to do a bunch of terrain work for high fidelity terrain and for faraway assets. Did a whole bunch of work on tessellation on site in the terrain to create a higher triangle count, which is like a higher fidelity when you're up close, which lets us get things like terrain deformation, snow and mud. Sure. We have a lot of snow. We didn't have any real deformation last time. It wasn't significant. And this time there's like deep snow. You can swing a sword around it. You can see it go through there. You can horse, you walk through it. All of those things we've kind of, and certainly the memory feature, being able to sort of go back in our memories on a flip of a switch, hitting a button, and it just loads a whole new set. That's something we couldn't have been able to do without PS5. So we're going to talk more about the specific targets and all of that, and kind of reveal everything regarding the base and the Pro in the near future.
Okay, so this is another feature that I'm not 100% sure if it's going to add something to the experience. I guess the way that they're talking about it seems like it's more convenience and for the sake of not breaking the immersion, you know, or your exploration, not interrupting your exploration basically, so that you don't have to go somewhere else to like a faraway camp to get an upgrade or learn a skill. Now you just have your allies come to you, which if you think about suspension of disbelief, that could be just as bad for that purpose. But I don't know. We'll have to see how it feels like once you're playing with it. Honestly, to me, it's more like a mood type of thing. The fact that you can set up camp, especially if there's not going to be haiku. I feel like there needs to be another activity that kind of gives you that sense of connection with something greater, you know? And I think doing that, just setting up camp under the stars and playing your shamisen. And it seems like the songs are also something that you can acquire by doing certain activities. Like the onsen, hot springs, or the bamboo, because they're all named after those activities, or like even the wolf. So yeah, curious to see how that works.
Atsu can set up camp under the stars of Ezo. But she's not always alone.
Hey, friend. Share your fire with the traveling peddler?
What are you selling?
A mask said to be cursed with the unpredictable nature of its previous owner.
Camping under the stars is a great way to rest up, play your shamisen, or cook to ready for a fight ahead. It's also designed to help bring important characters and upgrades straight to you.
So this part of the showcase was pretty interesting to see because you actually get to take a look at charms, and obviously there's going to be upgrades and stuff, but this is something that's new here, which is the fact that charms have power levels now, and it seems that they're the same types of charms, even down to the same icons for them. Some of them even have the same names, like we had a charm of Hachiman in the first one, but there's also new ones, so that makes me think about maybe new, what are they called, mythic tales having to do with these charms. But yeah, same, with sword kits, exactly the same as in Ghost, just cosmetic looks for your different weapons. And then here they showcase, that looks like the Tayadori armor. But yeah, one cool thing to see here is also the presence of loadouts. So hopefully from launch, we'll have loadouts this time around. And over here, you can see outfits on this column. And it's basically the same as in Ghost of Tsushima, where you have helmets and then masks, and then, body armor. And here we have your instrument, your shamisen, and then the saddle, and then all your charms. Then you see the different types of weapons that you have for melee, and then the different types for ranged, and then the quick fire, right? So you can see that the rifle, or I don't know if it's also called Teppo. I know that it's called Teppo in Assassin's Creed Shadows, but the rifle is bound to the ranged category, whereas the pistol is a quick fire. So the pistol is like a ghost weapon now. It's interesting to see. We have the kunai, we have the Mitsubishi, which is the blinding powder, the dirt throw, and then there's still Way of the Flame over here, and then the icon for the smoke bomb changed. So here with the throwables, we've already seen that there's going to be black powder bombs, or scorching bombs, I think is what they're called now. Then half bow, long bow, rifle. Looks like we don't have a sticky bomb anymore. So I guess it's been replaced by the Mitsubishi, unless it's something that hasn't been unlocked at this point for this character. But yeah. So I just wanted to comment on this part of the video real quick. And this is the starting screen. It looks like, very similar to what we got in Ghost of Tsushima, where you select the language that you want to play in. And it looks like this encounter with the snake is going to be the start of the game. And so the impression that I get from this is, obviously he's one of the Yotei 6. So it'd be awkward if she just defeated him at the start. So I think he's probably going to beat her and then get away, which is similar to what happens to Jin at the start of the game. The beach invasion, and then you see Jin gets wounded. So maybe something similar is going to happen where she's defeated, and then her journey is about learning the skills to take on the Yotei 6. So this is a part of the video where they show the different colorways for each armor set, and we kind of knew that was coming because we saw the presence of flowers, which likely will be used the same way they were in Ghost, used to purchase the different color dyes for each armor set, and everything looks pretty similar to Ghost. But this next image is something that I wanted to save for last because it's the thing that's the most interesting to me and probably most of the people watching my channel, because it's the only kind of nod or reference that we have to a possible Legends 2 multiplayer coming for this game. So over here, I think a lot of people might have missed it, but over here on the right, you can see there's the Sakai armor helmet, and then this one looks like a helmet that was added with Iki Island, and then underneath you can see the Ronin Casa, and then Over here in the middle, you see the kappa, that was used for assassin. And then over here, you can see something that looks like the Gosaku mask. And this one looks like the ghost mask. So this kind of gives us a pretty good idea of what to expect. And I think that over here, if I'm interpreting this correctly, it means that we're going to get to keep a lot of those classes that were using these masks in Legends. So I could be wrong, and it could just be that this is, for some reason, not part of the showcase. But even here, it looks like the assassin mask. They don't look like one-to-one, but they look like, maybe like stylized versions of the same masks that we had in Ghost of Tsushima Legends, but just slightly updated, to fit the look of this game, which I think is pretty cool. So even this pattern is like, I forget the name of this pattern, but it's also from Ghost of Tsushima. And it's one of the masks that the Ronin and the Hunter can, maybe also Samurai can put on. But yeah, curious and super excited about more news for Legends 2. But that's it. That's the end of the video. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll catch you on the next one.